The funniest guy in my school walked off the stage in the middle of the biggest performance of his life, and I swear, he never smiled the same way again. At the time, every single one of us thought it had to be part of the joke. It wasn't. And once we found out why he stopped talking that night, nothing about high school felt funny anymore. If you had asked anyone in our school who the most popular kid was, people probably would have said Nick without even thinking about it. Not because he was the captain of some team or because he was dating the prettiest girl in school. It was because Nick made everybody's day better. Seriously. The second he walked into a room, people would start grinning before he even opened his mouth. Teachers tried so hard to stay annoyed with him. They really did. But somehow, every time, he'd break them. He won class clown every single year, hosted assemblies, emceed school events, and somehow managed to get away with things nobody else would have survived for 5 seconds. One time our entire grade had to retake standardized tests because of some stupid computer glitch. Everybody was miserable. People kept muttering stuff like, "This is such a waste of time," while dragging themselves into the classroom. Nick walked in looking completely normal. Or, so we thought. About 20 minutes into the test, I heard this weird plastic crinkling noise behind me. Then somebody whispered, "Dude, what is happening?" I turned around. Nick had secretly worn one of those inflatable dinosaur costumes underneath his hoodie, and he was slowly filling it up during the math section. Slowly. Like really slowly. At first, all you could see was his shoulders getting wider. Then this giant T-Rex head started popping up over the desk. The teacher looked up from grading papers, blinked twice, and just stood there staring. The entire room went dead silent. Nick looked up with the tiniest innocent smile. The teacher pointed at him and tried to say something. Nothing came out. Then she completely lost it laughing. The rest of us weren't any better. The whole class was crying. Nobody even remembered how mad we were about retaking the test. That was Nick. He knew exactly where the line was. He never made people the joke. He made the moment funny. That's why everyone loved him. Another time, this shy freshman accidentally dropped her entire lunch tray in the cafeteria. Milk everywhere. French fries sliding across the floor. The whole cafeteria went quiet for that awful half second where everybody's deciding whether they're going to laugh. Before anybody else could react, Nick stood up, picked up his own tray, dropped it on purpose. Food exploded across the floor. He threw both hands into the air. Twins. The cafeteria erupted, but nobody was laughing at the girl anymore. They were laughing with her. She actually smiled while the lunch ladies helped clean everything up. That's the kind of person Nick was. Even this kid who always sat alone during lunch somehow became part of Nick's comedy routine. Nick walked over one day, looked around dramatically, then announced loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the VIP section." The kid looked confused. Nick pulled out a chair. "You think everyone gets this much personal space?" "Nah, man. This is luxury seating." By the end of lunch, there were 4 people sitting at that table. Nobody ever called it the lonely table again. Junior year hit everybody differently. College applications, SAT scores, parents asking about our future every 5 minutes. People were stressed. Nick decided the solution was something he called Bad Joke Wednesday. The funny part? He did it every single morning. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, didn't matter. Every morning announcements ended with Nick grabbing the microphone. "So, today's Bad Joke Wednesday." Somebody always yelled, "It's Friday." Nick would answer, "Emotionally, it's Wednesday." The principal hated it. "You can't keep calling every day Wednesday." Nick shrugged. "I believe in consistency." Eventually, they tried shutting the whole thing down. Students complained so much they actually brought it back. That's how much everyone needed him. Looking back now, I think we all depended on Nick more than we realized. He made bad days feel smaller. He made awkward moments disappear. He somehow convinced an entire school that if you laughed hard enough, everything would be okay. And honestly, we believed him. By the time the talent show came around, nobody was talking about anything else. People kept saying, "Nick's been working on this forever. I heard it's going to be insane. He won't top the dinosaur thing." Oh, he definitely will. The auditorium filled up way before the show even started. Kids were sitting in the aisles. Teachers stood along the back wall. People had their phones ready before Nick even walked on stage. The lights dimmed. His name got announced. The room exploded. Nick walked onto the stage like he always did, relaxed, smiling, one hand in his pocket like he wasn't about to perform in front of hundreds of people. He grabbed the microphone. So, has anyone else noticed our Spirit Week themes are getting weird? People laughed immediately. I mean, seriously? Next year, they're probably gonna do Dress Like Your Parents' Biggest Disappointment Day. The audience cracked up. Nick paused, shrugged. Actually, never mind. He pointed at himself. That's just every day for me. The entire auditorium absolutely lost it. People were doubled over laughing. Phones were recording. Teachers were shaking their heads, trying not to smile. I remember thinking, he's doing it again. Somehow he's topping every joke he's ever told. And then he just stopped. He just stopped. No punchline. No awkward recovery. No just kidding. Nothing. It was like somebody had hit pause on the funniest person any of us had ever met. Nick stood there holding the microphone, staring into the crowd, not looking around, not scanning faces, just staring at one spot. The laughter slowly died, one row after another. At first, people kept chuckling because they thought this was the setup. You know he's cooking something. Wait for it. He's gonna say something crazy. 5 seconds passed, then 10, then 20. Nobody laughed anymore. The room became so quiet I could hear somebody drop a water bottle somewhere near the back of the auditorium. Nick blinked, took one slow breath. Then, without saying a single word, he bent down and carefully placed the microphone on the stage floor. Not dropped it, placed it, like he didn't want it making any noise. He straightened up, turned around, and walked off stage through the side curtain. No wave, no smile, no explanation. The audience just sat there. I remember looking at my friend beside me. Dude, what? Is this part of it? He shrugged. I don't know. People started whispering. What happened? Did he forget his lines? Is he sick? Did somebody faint? Nobody had any answers. A few teachers hurried backstage. The curtains stayed closed longer than they should have. Then our drama teacher walked onto the stage with the microphone. She forced a smile. Nick isn't feeling well tonight. There was an awkward pause. We're just going to move on to the next performance. Nobody clapped. Nobody believed her. You could tell she didn't even believe herself. The rest of the talent show happened. Technically, people still performed. The band played. Someone did a magic act. A dance team went on. But honestly, nobody remembers any of it. Every conversation afterward was exactly the same. What happened to Nick? I've never seen him like that. You think he had a panic attack? My cousin says he threw up backstage. No, my sister works in the office. She said he just left. Rumors spread faster than homework answers. By the next morning, there were probably 20 different stories floating around school. He got food poisoning. He found out he failed a class. His parents got divorced. He had stage fright. Every version sounded convincing for about 5 minutes. Then somebody else would swear they had the real story. Only, nobody actually did. The weirdest part wasn't that he left the stage. It was that he didn't come back. Friday, no Nick. Monday, still nothing. Tuesday, his seat stayed empty. The classroom felt wrong. Nobody realized how much noise one person could add to a room until it disappeared. Teachers actually started class on time. Morning announcements lasted less than 2 minutes. Nobody interrupted anything. Nobody made jokes when the projector refused to work. Nobody yelled. Technology's taking another emotional support day. Everything just worked. And somehow that made school feel even stranger. Even lunch wasn't the same. People still talked. But it wasn't loud anymore. The cafeteria sounded different. Like somebody had turned the volume down on the entire building. By Wednesday morning, people stopped asking where Nick was. Not because they didn't care. Because nobody had an answer. Then he came back. I almost didn't recognize him. Same hoodie, same backpack, same messy hair. But it wasn't the same Nick. Usually, he'd walk through the hallway giving people little nods, high-fiving random freshmen, making comments about somebody's ridiculous shoes. You lose a bet? Bro, those sneakers got their own zip code. Stuff like that. This time, nothing. He kept his head down, walked straight to class, sat in his seat, didn't talk. When somebody behind him said, "Yo, Nick, where have you been?" He just quietly answered, "Home." That was it. No joke. No fake dramatic story. No sarcastic comeback. Just home. The teacher actually paused attendance for a second because she looked so surprised hearing him answer in one word. The first few days, everyone kept trying. You feeling okay? You sick? You want to hang out after school? Nick always gave tiny answers. I'm good. Nah. Maybe later. Except later never came. He stopped eating lunch with the big group, stopped hanging around before class, stopped doing announcements. The principal quietly canceled Bad Joke Wednesday. This time, nobody complained. It would have felt wrong. Something had happened. Something big. Nobody knew what. Then, little by little, pieces started coming together. Not officially. Schools never announce stuff like this. It's always whispers. Conversations that stop when teachers walk by. Parents talking quietly at pickup. Older siblings hearing things. One afternoon, I heard two seniors talking outside the gym. I heard it was his friend. No way. Yeah. Since elementary school. What happened? One of them lowered his voice. I guess. He tried to hurt himself. I felt my stomach drop. What? They said he'd been getting bullied online. The other guy frowned. I didn't even know he had social media. Apparently anonymous accounts. They kept going after him. For months. Nobody knew exactly what to believe. But every day another piece fit into place. Anonymous messages. Constant comments. People making fun of his anxiety. Calling him weak, annoying. Telling him everybody secretly hated him. Saying his friends only tolerated him. The kind of stuff that's easy to type when you're hiding behind a screen. The kind of stuff nobody else sees. Suddenly, people started remembering things. Didn't he stop eating lunch with us? Yeah, around winter. I thought he was just busy. He quit coming to basketball games, too. I figured he got tired of them. He wore hoodies every single day. I thought he was just cold. Every memory suddenly looked different. Like somebody had changed the lighting on moments we'd already lived through. I kept replaying conversations in my own head. Times I'd seen him walking alone. Times he'd smiled even though something felt off. I told myself I would have noticed if it were serious. Wouldn't I? Apparently not. Then someone told me what happened the morning of the talent show. Nick found out before he walked onto that stage. His best friend had survived. He got help. But Nick learned everything only hours before standing in front of hundreds of people expected to laugh. Every joke he planned, every punchline, every bit he'd rehearsed, suddenly none of it mattered anymore. And standing under those bright auditorium lights, looking out into the crowd, something inside him just broke. Nobody knew exactly what he saw while staring into the audience that night. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Maybe he realized how many people had laughed with him for years, while the one person who needed him most had been quietly falling apart the whole time. Whatever happened in those few silent seconds, the Nick who walked off that stage wasn't the same one who'd walked onto it. For a while, nobody knew what to say to Nick. Honestly, I don't think he knew what to say to us either. People stopped trying to make him laugh. They stopped asking where he'd been. It wasn't because they didn't care. It was because every conversation felt like walking across thin ice. You wanted to help, but you were terrified of saying the wrong thing. Weeks passed. School slowly started sounding like school again. Teachers joked during class. The cafeteria got loud. Morning announcements went back to normal. Life kept moving. It always does. Nick did too. He went to class, turned in assignments, answered questions when teachers called on him. But he never became the guy he used to be. One afternoon after school, I saw him sitting alone in his car in the parking lot. The engine wasn't running. His backpack was tossed into the passenger seat, and he was just staring through the windshield. I knocked lightly on the window. He looked over. Oh, hey, you heading home? In a minute. I pointed at the empty passenger seat. You mind? He shrugged. Sure. The inside of the car was quiet except for the ticking sound of the cooling dashboard. Neither of us talked for a minute. I finally broke the silence. So, he let out a tired laugh. I know. No. You don't have to explain if you don't want to. Another pause. Then he looked down at his hands resting on the steering wheel. I do. His voice sounded completely different than I remembered. Not broken, just heavy. You know what's messed up? I shook my head. I noticed everything. He laughed once, but there wasn't any humor in it. I noticed when teachers were having a bad day. I noticed when someone looked embarrassed. I noticed when the room needed somebody to make everybody laugh. He stared out the windshield. I'd built my whole life around noticing people. I didn't interrupt. And somehow, he swallowed. I completely missed my best friend. The words hung in the car. Neither of us moved. He'd been hurting for months. I looked at him. I didn't know. I know. Nobody really did. He nodded slowly. That's the problem. He rubbed both hands across his face before continuing. I kept thinking back to all these little moments. His voice got quieter. He stopped eating lunch with us months ago. I joked that he was getting too cool to sit with the rest of us. Nick lipped down. I thought I was making him laugh. He shook his head. He wasn't pulling away because he thought he was too cool. He was pulling away because he was struggling. I remembered hearing people say the same thing after everything came out. Back then, none of us questioned it. Nick kept talking. Then he started wearing long sleeves every day. He gave another empty laugh. It was like 85 degrees outside. I told him he was cold-blooded, like a lizard. He closed his eyes for a second. Everybody laughed. I laughed. I thought he laughed too. He leaned back against the seat. I didn't ask why. Another long silence filled the car. Cars pulled out of the parking lot around us. Students walked past laughing about homework, weekend plans, and who had embarrassed themselves in gym class. Life outside kept sounding normal. Inside the car, everything felt different. Nick finally spoke again. After everything happened, they showed me. I frowned. Showed you what? The messages. His voice almost disappeared. I wish I hadn't read them. He looked like he was somewhere else now, replaying memories he couldn't turn off. They kept telling him his anxiety made him annoying. They said everybody was pretending to like him. They said nobody actually wanted him around. They'd send stuff in the middle of the night. Every night. He shook his head. I had no idea. I was asleep. He was awake at 3 in the morning reading strangers telling him he didn't matter. I didn't know what to say. There wasn't anything to say. Nick took a slow breath. You know what's even worse? What? He looked at me. He still laughed at my jokes. That sentence hit harder than anything else he'd said. He never told me to stop. He never acted angry. He'd laugh. And I'd think. Nick forced a sad smile. Okay, he's doing all right. He looked away again. I confused laughing with being okay. The parking lot was almost empty now. A school bus rolled past the exit. Somewhere across campus, a custodian slammed a metal dumpster shut. The sound echoed for a second before everything became quiet again. Nick rested both elbows on the steering wheel. My whole life was just one big joke. He stopped. I waited. And he needed an actual friend. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, he whispered the sentence I'd never forget. He was literally screaming for help. His voice cracked. And I just kept making him laugh instead of asking if he was okay. I stared out through the windshield because I honestly didn't know where else to look. I kept replaying everything in my own head too. The cafeteria, the announcements, the dinosaur costume, the talent show, all those moments that had made us laugh until our stomachs hurt. Nick had always seemed like the one person who noticed everything, but the truth was, the rest of us hadn't noticed either. We all saw pieces of the puzzle. Someone eating alone, someone pulling away, someone wearing long sleeves when it was too hot, someone smiling a little less, someone laughing anyway. Individually, none of those things felt important. Together, they were someone asking for help in the only ways they knew how. His friend survived. He got the help he needed. I'm grateful for that every single time I think back on those days. But I've never been able to hear the phrase, "They're probably fine," the same way again. Because sometimes the funniest person in the room isn't the one who needs saving. Sometimes it's the person sitting quietly beside them. And sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is believing that if someone is still laughing, they must be okay.